again, my little Snotlings, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we shall be delving into the old world, and we're going to be taking a look at what very well may becoming my new favorite faction for this game. It's mean, it's green, it's time for the Orc and Goblin tribes. We are going to be taking a look at every single unit available to the greenskins, and we are going to be giving them a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's time for Smash or Pass. And so, without further ado, let's grab our choppers, use a goblin as a shield, and war right into today's episode. You there, guardsman! Do you like multi-part plastic sci-fi infantry that doesn't cost a kidney? Well, good news! The Mordian Glory channel is now officially sponsored by Wargames Atlantic. Wargames Atlantic sells fantastic sci-fi models which are perfect as alternative Imperial guardsmen. This includes the Bulldogs, totally not Praetorians, or the Legrognards, which are totally not Mordians, Festorians, or Kriegers, all in one box. And the best bit is, Wargames Atlantic offers a bulk buy discount, and the more you buy, the bigger the discount. Perfect for amassing those huge platoons of guardsmen. So what are you waiting, you fool? Click on the affiliate link down below, get yourself some great models, and support the channel today. As is only Roy and proper with the greenskins, we need to start with the boss. We need to start with the big bad boys that run the whole show. And first into the breach, we have the Black Orc Bosses. And I can tell you right now, these are an easy smash. Not only do the Black Orc Bosses have an incredibly impressive stat line with a high weapon skill, good strength and toughness right off the bat, and importantly, a high initiative. A Black Orc War Boss is initiative 6. That's almost elven in its speed. And then you've got a good base number of attacks and a high leadership. All of this comes in at a pretty inexpensive price point. Only 135 points for a Black Orc War Boss and only 75 points if you want the Black Orc Big Boss. And let me tell you, that's an absolute steal. That Black Orc Big Boss could pull the arms and legs off my Empire General, and he costs more than the Big Boss. They are combat beasts. They are absolute tin openers. They will be able to go toe-to-toe with some of the best combat characters out there, and it's only things like fully souped up Chaos Lords that they might struggle with. And even then, with the right loadout, these guys won't have a problem. But there's another far more important reason, and I know saying that more important than killing power is pretty much heresy amongst the orcs, but bear with me, that these guys are an easy smash. Quell Impetuosity. This is a special rule which means all units around them do not have to take their impetuous tests. Now, impetuosity is a really big issue for orcs and goblins. It can mean your army goes off and doesn't do as it's told. It can cause your units to charge into the fray when you really don't want them to. It can cause them to be pulled out of position. They can fail charges. It's just a really big downside. In fact, it's probably the biggest weakness of the faction. So having a Black Orc War Boss literally solves your army's biggest problem. After the Black Orc Bosses, we have got regular Orc Bosses. These also come in War Boss and Big Boss flavor. Overall, they are a little cheaper. For example, the Orc War Boss is 110 points, the Black Orc War Boss is 135 points. The Black Orc Big Boss is 75 points, the Orc Big Boss is a mere 55 points. Now, you might think that with such a discount that Orc Bosses are significantly worse than Black Orc Bosses, but the truth is, they ain't that different. They've got one less weapon skill, one less ballistic skill, but truly, who cares about that one? And from what I can see, one less initiative? Oh, and one less leadership. Now, some of that stuff does matter, like one less weapon skill. It doesn't matter when your boss is fighting rank and file, but it will matter if you start getting into challenges, mano-a-mano fights with some other characters who might also have high weapon skill. But the less leadership doesn't matter at all, because this unit has Warband. So you stick him in a unit of boys, and you've got a few extra ranks, and you'll be back up to leadership 10 in no time. And the extra initiative, it is good, if you're in an ongoing combat or an ongoing challenge, but if you're charging with an Orc boss, he's still going to be initiative 7 or initiative 8, depending on if he is a big boss or a war boss. 9 times out of 10, that is going to be more than enough for you to still be able to strike first with your guy. So it sounds like these regular Orc bosses are an easy smash, right? Sadly not. The big problem with them is they don't quell impetuosity. And if you're looking at this from a purely sort of competitive, sort of efficiency, reliability point of view, you want your army to do as it's told, when it's told, then you're going to spring those extra 20 points for the Black Orc boss every single time. I've faced off against Orcs and Goblins multiple times at tournaments. I've seen many lists at tournaments, and every single one of them has had a Black Orc boss over a regular one. So from a competitive point of view, these guys are a pass. But it is worth mentioning that if you are a more casual player, if you're the kind of person that likes Orcs because they are random and wacky and sometimes they'll just throw the game away and that's just part of the fun, then the Orc boss is definitely a smash for you. But now we get to the last kind of Orc character, and these are the Shamans. They come in 2 different types. You've got the Weird Knob and the Weird Boy. The Weird Knob is the high level one that can get up to Wizard level 4, and the Weird Boy is the low level one that can get up to Wizard level 2. As is fairly typical with Magic users in Old World, their stat lines aren't that impressive, essentially a slightly upgraded Orc Boy, although it is worth noting that they are a little tougher just because they are Orcs. But of course, you're not taking them for the stat line, you're taking them for their magical prowess and what laws they have access to. And Orc Shamans not only have access to War Magic and Elementalism, which are 2 fantastic laws, but they also have access to the all-important Battle Magic. Pillar of Fire, here we come. On top of this, the Orc Weird Knobs are able to ride on Wyverns, and we all know how potent dragon or dragon equivalent mounted magicians can be in this game. However, despite all of this, I am going to begrudgingly give them a pass and not a smash. There are a few reasons for this. Firstly, you can only take 1 level 4 Orc Shaman per 1,000 points. And so even though they have access to battle magic, they can't go full Empire Colleges of Magic and unleash 3 good Pillars of Fire early on. Also, they're slightly more expensive than a Goblin Shaman, who can do essentially the same stuff, but for a cheaper price point. And if you start putting them on a Wyvern, they are getting very, very expensive. But the big reason, the main reason, if I'm going to be totally honest, this is the number 1 reason, is they have access to the Law of Gork and not access to the Law of Mork. And the Law of Mork, which is the one that the Gobbo Shamans can tap into, has some of the best spells in the entire game. And as a result of this, in a lot of cases, you are going to be much better off going for a Gobbo Shaman over an Orc Shaman. But whilst we're talking about Shamans, we might as well go over to those Goblin ones. Now, you have got Goblin Shamans and you have got Night Goblin Shamans. They are very, very similarly priced. They are very, very similar in terms of their stat lines. I believe that the regular Goblin Shamans might have slightly higher leadership than the Night Goblin ones. The big difference between these different Shamans is the magic and the laws that they have access to. So both can be taken at level 4, max level, and both have got access, of course, to War Magic and have got access to the Law of Mork. But Goblin Shamans get access to Elementalism, and Night Goblin Shamans get access to Illusion. Now, both of these are bloody fantastic laws. Elementalism with Wind Blast and with Earthen Ramparts is a staple for a lot of armies. And Illusion is also fantastic because you have things like Column of Crystal, which can be a game changer. But for me, the best bit about Goblin Shamans is that War Magic, it is that Law of Mork, and specifically, it is the best spell in the entire game itchy nuisance. It has a casting value of 9+, so if you've got a level 4 Goblin Shaman, it's going to be getting off on a 5+, and until the start of your next turn, so it survives through your turn and through the opponent's turn, the target enemy suffers minus D3 modifier to their toughness and their initiative characteristics. That is such a massive debuff. You can take a steam tank down from being one of the toughest things in the game to being as tough as an orc boy. Long story short, Night Goblin Shamans, easy smash. They're a little cheaper. They can still get to level 4. They got access to loads of good laws of magic, loads of good spells. Fantastic units. But then we've got the other goblin characters, and that is the bosses. Common goblin bosses are dirt cheap. You get a goblin war boss for 60 points, a goblin big boss for a mere 35 points. And their stat lines are alright, you know. That goblin big boss has got weapon skill 4, he has got strength 4, and he's got initiative 4 with 3 attacks. Now the leadership is only leadership 6, but he can benefit from warband, so you could get that easily like leadership 9, no problems. And the goblin war boss, who is of course a lot more expensive, has a really tasty stat line and can get the leadership 10 with some cheeky warband. I mean, to put this into perspective, you could take a goblin boss, deck him out with 100 points of magical equipment, have a really blingy war boss, and he would still only be 25 points more than the starting cost of a black orc war boss. These guys are dirt cheap. But despite this, I'm going to give them a pass. And that's not because these guys are bad. It's because there's a better option, which is the Night Goblin boss. Night Goblin bosses are basically the same as your Goblin bosses, except they're, again, a little bit cheaper. That's because they've got slightly lower leadership, but as we've seen with, like, Warband, you can easily get around those leadership problems. And the thing is, Night Goblin bosses not only are a bit cheaper, not only are comparable in terms of damage output and all that good stuff, but they're also not impetuous. So you could have an entire orc army which can easily get round the impetuousness, because you've got the black orcs that can keep people in line, and then you can have night goblins as well. And so between black orcs and night goblins, the vast majority of your army can just completely solve its biggest weakness. Also, goblin bosses, I should say night goblin bosses, can go on great cave squigs, which are fantastic. And you need night goblin bosses to unlock other units like night goblins. You can take a unit of common goblins, you take as many of them as you want. But with night goblins, you can only take one unit like night goblins or squigherds, stuff like that, for each boss and shaman that you've got, for each night goblin boss and shaman that you've got. So as a result, you might as well always go for the night goblin bosses, because it solves your impetuous problems, and also you need them to unlock some of your other best units. But speaking of units, let's get into the infantry corps. And orcs and goblins are really spoiled for choice. A lot of these unit options are going to mirror the kind of characters that we've seen so far. So first up, we've got the Black Orc Mobs. These are your premier elite shock infantry, and they are an easy smash. Firstly, they're dirt cheap. They're 12 points per guy, and they come with a good weapon skill, good natural strength, good natural toughness, decent leadership. They also quell impetuosity. They come with full plate armor inbuilt. They can have additional hand weapons, or you can give them all great weapons. They've got motley crew, so you can do some shenanigans where you have like the sword and board guys with a 3-up save, taking the hits, whilst the great weapon guys dole out the pain. Easy smash, one of your best units, should never leave home without a unit of Black Orcs. After Black Orcs, we have got regular Orc Boys. These are your core choices, and I like them. They're 5 points a pop, and you get a toughness 4 infantry. I mean, that is the same points as an Empire State Troop, same stat line as an Empire State Troop, except I've just got more toughness. What's not to like? Best thing to do with these guys is to give them additional hand weapons, and that will give you 2 attacks per guy at 6 points a pop. Also, they have the chopper special rule, which gives them cool rerolls inbuilt as well. They're just good. The problem with Orc Boys, though, and why you will find a lot of people saying that they are in a pass unit, a complete pass, is because they're only strength 3. And so the moment you start getting into anything that's remotely tough, they start just banging their heads against a brick wall. I'm someone that runs a lot of Empire State troops, right? And I thought that spearmen were the absolute bee's knees. Until I started using them in a few games, I realized it doesn't matter how many attacks I've got. If they're at strength 3 with no AP, they kind of piss, right? So then I switched over to halberds, and it was like night and day. Yeah, I had less attacks, but I was hitting at strength 4, and I had AP 1 built in. And so I feel like if I'm being totally objective and I'm not letting my natural love for big orc mobs get in the way, I think that orc mobs are good for what you pay for them, but they have some big weaknesses, and so they probably are a pass. The exception to this is Savage Orcs. This is where you take Orc Boys and you give them the War Paint special rule. This gives them a ward save over having light armor, which is much better, and you can also give them Frenzy for 1 point per model. Now at that point, we are looking at 7-point models with 3 attacks on the charge. That is an absolute blender that will go through any light infantry that they come across, and will even be able to threaten some medium infantry like Chaos Warriors through pure volume of attacks. And another exception to this pass is if you go down the big guns route, because they get +2 strength and armor bane for 2 points per model, which literally solves all of their problems, and they still get to remain being a core choice as well. So your regular Orc Boys probably aren't worth it, but going down the Savage Orc route or the Big Uns route definitely is. After the Orcs, we have got the Goblin Mobs. Just going to be upfront with you guys, they're absolutely trash and not really worth considering from a competitive point of view. Problem with Goblin Mobs is that they just don't really do anything. They're 3 points a model, and they do come with hand weapons and shields. You can upgrade them to have spears and light armor, which gets them up to 5 points, and then suddenly they're not cheap. They don't do any damage because they're weapon skill 2. The problem with Goblin Mobs is that they're not Night Goblins. That's it. They're impetuous. They cost more than Night Goblins. They're not really any more durable. And Nasty Skulkers, which are the upgrade that Goblin Mobs get, where essentially they get like few mini characters that can run around and like stab people, just aren't worth it. So Goblin Mobs, and it pains to say it because they are actually my favourites. I do prefer the look of common goblins over night goblins, but Goblin Mobs stay at home. Night Goblin Mobs, we'll just go straight into them. Fantastic unit. They're cheaper than your regular goblins because they just get the hand weapons and shields. You don't have to worry about giving them like spears or anything like that. Screw that. Keep them cheap. And then you can also just load up on fanatics, which are awesome. And night goblins can get short bows. I mean, so can common goblins. But you can then combine that with a unique night goblin piece of equipment that can give them poison, and so you can have a whole bunch of short bow shots just laying wave after wave of poison wounds into enemies as well. So long story short, goblins meh, night goblins very yes. We've also got the smallest of the greenskins, the Snotlings. Now, Snotlings are your swarm choice. They're 35 points each, and they come with a surprisingly high movement of 5, but they're only strength 2, toughness 2, 6 wounds. They have no armor whatsoever, but they do get throwing weapons, which is hilarious, and they are immune to psychology, and they can be skirmishers, and they are unbreakable, and they are vanguard. Honestly, I really like them. I never see anyone running them competitively, though. And that does worry me slightly, because they look great. But people mustn't be taking them for a reason. But from what I can see, if you need to just have a really wounds-dense, unbreakable wall that you could just throw at someone and just block them off and just get in their way and just be really annoying, then Snotling mobs do have a purpose. The last core choice here is the Night Goblin Squigherds. I really like these, and I have seen them used to great effect. They're not very durable because there's no armor in the whole unit, but they have got really vicious damage output. The Squigherders themselves are nothing to write home about. They're literally just Night Goblins. But the Cave Squigs are great. Strength 5 base, AP -1, Armor Bane thanks to their Ooge Gobs, and they've got 2 attacks each. They are 10 points a pop, but remember that cost is going to be offset a bit by the fact that the Squigherders themselves are so bloody cheap. I think what I like about Night Goblin Squigherds though is the fact that they're immune to psychology. One of the ways that I would want to try and deal with these if I was facing them is to shoot them up a little bit and then cause them to panic because they're only like leadership 6. But because they're immune to psychology, and you can even take them as skirmishers, which is pretty wild, it means that they're going to get up that board and then they're going to start munching and munching and munching. And if they get the charge off first, they're probably going to munch to the point where they're going to win the combat, and then their low leadership isn't a big deal. The problem with Night Goblin Squigherds is, of course, that they are infantry, they are foot-based. There is a big risk that someone with a long charge distance like cavalry could get the drop on them, and in that case, they might end up losing the combat, and then they're going to break and flee and all that kind of stuff. When that does happen, you do have the Squig Go Wild rule, which means that all units within 2d6 friend or foe start taking d3 strength 5 hits. So even if they break, they can actually do some damage on the way out. I like them. They're a core choice, which is important. They're immune to psychology. They're not impetuous. I'm gonna give them a smash. Next up, we've got the troll mobs. Troll mobs come in many different varieties. You've got common troll mobs, river troll mobs, and stone troll mobs. They've all got very slightly different stat lines and also got very slightly different points values. But the big thing is that they're really, really smashy and they're quite cheap for what they do. Trolls are all natively strength 5. Trolls are all natively 3 attacks each. Trolls all come with a 5-up regen inbuilt, making them surprisingly durable. And they also get troll vomit, along with the fact that every single one of them can have great weapons. I have been on the receiving end of a troll charge with great weapons. It was not a pretty sight. I got absolutely brutalized. The downside of trolls is the fact that they are initiative 1 or 2, depending on which variety you take. But that's not really a downside, because you are going to take great weapons on them anyway. Because great weapons are great. The only other downside of trolls is they are thick as 2 short planks. They are stupid, and they've only got leadership 4, or if you're a stone troll and you're particularly brave, you have got leadership 5. It's not such a big problem when you have a character nearby who they can use their leadership, if you've got your general nearby, their leadership to pass that stupidity test fairly reliably. Also, their movement is 6, so they're bloody rapid. They're really fast. Trolls are an easy smash, and you see them popping up in a lot of Orc and Gobbo lists, and it's not a surprise. Our next unit is a bit of a controversial one. Some people love them and swear by them, and some people think that they're rubbish and they don't like them at all. It is the Orc Boar Boyz. Now, Orc Boar Boyz are your heavy cavalry, essentially. They are your shock cavalry. They are 15 points a pop, and they have an Orcs stat line. They're weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 3, strength 3 with that toughness of 4. And they also have got the War Boars, which are movement 7, also weapon skill 3, also strength 3, and they add an extra attack on there. Now, the reason that a lot of people don't like the Boar Boys is because of this sort of fundamental Orky stat line, where there's a lot of strength 3 going along, there's only 1 attack per guy, they're 15 points each, which is pretty pricey for Orc units. But a lot of these problems can be mitigated. If you give them cavalry spears, then suddenly they're going to be better strength and they're going to be better AP on the charge. Also, the War Boars have the Tusker Charge special rule, which gives them an extra strength, and I think gives them an extra AP as well. So on the charge, these guys really are good. Then they get rid of a lot of their problems. The issue is, of course, that they are impetuous, because they are essentially regular orcs. You could put a Black Orc nearby. That's going to fix the problem. They only have 1 attack each, but then Furious Charge means that they do get +1 attack on the riders, not on the mounts. You can make them Frenzy as well, for 1 point each. You can make them Big Uns as well. 0 to 1 units in your army will be Big Uns for 2 points a model. Here's the thing with Orc Boar Boyz. At their base level, they're probably not worth it. But properly supported, and with a few points invested in them, I think they can be Premier Shock Cavalry. They do have Swift Stride as well, which is important to note. They do have Counter Charge, which is important to note. Even if they don't get the charge off, you know, they can still be alright. And they can be pretty tough, with Armoured Hide, and Light Armour, and with shields. So what it comes down to is, are you willing to pay for them? If you like to keep your Orc and Gobbo units cheap, you might find the Orc Boar Boys a little pricey. But if you're willing to spend the points on them, I think they can be really, really strong. Not to be outdone, the Goblins have their own cavalry. And in fact, they have a plethora of cavalry choices. First into the breach, or should I say up the walls, we have got the Goblin Spider Rider mobs. These are interesting. The Goblin Riders are not much to write home about. They are literally Goblin stats. But the Giant Spiders have got better weapon skill than the Goblins, and they've got a quite impressive Initiative 4. The big thing about the Spider Rider mobs is they have poisoned attacks. Now, correct me down in the comment section if I am wrong, but I believe these poison attacks apply to all of their weapons, not just the poisonous fangs of the Giant Spiders. That means that when you shoot people with your short bows, they're going to be poison attacks. That means if you attack them in combat, everyone's going to have poisoned attacks. They also move through cover, and they do have Swift Stride as well. But my big problem with Goblin Spider Riders is that they're not that fast, because they're only movement 7. When you compare that to some of the other cavalry choices we're going to look at in a moment, you'll see that is quite slow. But also, they're expensive. They're 12 points. And if you twist my arm and ask me to choose between a Goblin Spider Rider and a Black Orc, sure, they're going to do different things on the battlefield. I get that. I know it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges, but I'm still probably going to be like, I'd rather have the Black Orc, thank you. The second Goblin Cavalry unit is the Wolf Riders. Now, I'm going to be upfront with you. I am massively biased towards Wolf Riders. When I was a kid and I was collecting Orcs and Goblins as one of my first Warhammer armies ever, my favourite units in that army were my Wolf Riders. So I am biased. However, even with my bias, even without my bias, taking it into account, I still think that Goblin Wolf Riders are actually a pretty good unit. Firstly, they are fast. The speed! My God, the speed! They're 9-inch move thanks to the giant wolves. You can march 18 inches. That's really good. And they're cheap. 10 points a pop. And they can take cavalry spears for free. Or they can take short bows for free. You got to pay for that stuff in your Spider Rider mobs. Spider Riders got to pay 1 point a pop. With Goblin Wolf Riders, pick the weapon you want. It's free. You go, girl. You go for it, man. The only weapon option that you can pay for is light armor. That's the only equipment upgrade you've got. And it's 1 point a guy. But I just wouldn't bother with it. There's not really much difference between a 6-up save and a 5-up save in Old World. One of the most appealing things about Wolf Riders, though, is the special rules that they can purchase. For 2 points a model, you can have Feigned Flight, and for 1 point a model, you can have Reserve Move. Both of these are extremely potent and extremely powerful, and in the right hands will be extremely frustrating for your opponent to deal with. However, there is one small problem. They are impetuous. So they're going to be operating on the flanks. They're going to be a long way away, probably, from anyone who's going to be quelling any sort of impetuosity. And they are very fast. So they're probably going to be in charge range, which means they're probably going to be trying to make some charges that they shouldn't. I think Goblin Wolf Riders are one of the greatest examples of what makes Orcs and Goblins so fun. You've got this unit with so much potential, with this phenomenal speed and all these special rules, and they might just completely turbo fuck themselves when they fail an impetuous test and then laminate themselves against an Empire steam tank or some sort of chaos chosen blob that they really shouldn't have charged. So whether you like them or not, whether they're a smash or a pass or not, comes down to how much you're willing to embrace that impetuousness. The last cavalry choice is the Night Goblin Squighopper mobs. These are goblins riding squigs. These are as good as you would expect them to be, which is very good considering how much I praise the regular squigs. In fact, I would say that I would probably pick Squighoppers over Squigherds if I'd already filled out my core requirements. They are random movement 3d6, which is more of a benefit than a negative, because if you're random movement, it means your opponent can't stand and shoot you. They can't do any charge reaction other than hold. Also, they come as skirmishers, which means they're harder for the enemy to shoot. And then they're also immune to psychology, so they can't break you before you get there because you're low leadership because you're a goblin. And you get impact hits per squig. You get 1 impact hit. And the squigs themselves have got strength 5 with 2 attacks with those huge gobs. They're great. The problem some people have with them is that they are loner, so I don't think that you can join character to them. But I think if you have a Night Goblin boss on a great cave squig, I think he can join the unit, although don't quote me on that. And all of this to boot for just 12 points a pop. Again, would I rather have these or the Spider Riders? I'd probably have these every single time as well, because you don't need to really upgrade them with anything, because the squigs are doing all the hard work and they're faster moving than the normal Squigherds, typically. So Night Goblin Squighopper mobs are an easy smash. After cavalry, we have got chariots. Orcs and goblins have got 2 kinds of chariots. You've got Orc Boar Chariots and you've got Goblin Wolf Chariots. Orc Boar Chariots are more expensive, but they have higher strength, they have higher toughness, and they have better impact hits. Goblin Chariots are faster, but they are not as durable, and they have less impact hits. The big question is, do you want speed, or do you want durability? Also, do you want to mount someone in the chariot? You can have them as mounts, which can actually be quite an interesting and spicy option. Both of these units have all of the pros and cons that come with chariots. Namely, that they are durable until someone points a great cannon at them, and then suddenly they're very not durable. I think they're good as character mounts. I think they're good if you buy like the starter box and you get some chariots in there. But I think most people will move on from their chariots to some proper cavalry once they've managed to flesh out their army a bit. Technically, there is one more chariot. It is the Snotling Pump Wagon. This thing is a meme incarnate. It is what happens when the Snotlings try and build a chariot, but they don't really understand what they're doing. It's got random movement 2d6. Again, we've spoken about how random movement is actually often a good thing. And it's strength 4, toughness 4 with 3 wounds. It is immune to psychology, but it is not unbreakable. Which is very surprising, considering that the regular Snotlings are unbreakable. It only has hand weapons and throwing weapons. It does have Armor Bane 3, but that only applies to its impact hits, which are D3 plus 1. It's cheap, it's 35 points, and you can take them in surprisingly large squads. In fact, a lot of these chariots can be taken in quite large squads. The Orc Boar Chariot is one and done, but the Goblin Chariots you can take up to 5 in a unit. Snotling Pump Wagon you can take up to 6 in a unit. Maybe going Pump Wagon Goblin Wolf Chariot spam would be a thing, but I've not seen anyone do it, and it's probably because that these things are fairly easy to kill. Now it's time for the monsters! Starting off, we have got the Wyvern. Now, you cannot take Wyverns on their own. They have to be taken as mounts for a boss, and they do cost 130 points. However, any boss that you put on them will gain +1 toughness and +4 bloody wounds. That's quite good, actually. That's a lot of extra wounds, and that's like, what, like toughness 6 or Black Orc bosses? I'm doing it live. How tough is a Black Orc boss? Like T5 or T6? He's T5, so he'd go up to T6 with the Wyvern. That's cool. The Wyvern itself has got some decent attacks. It's got 3 attacks, and it has Wicked Claws, and it can then also whip someone with its venomous tail, which is a poison attack with strikes first. Wicked Claws are at strength 6, AP -2. It causes terror, it has Swift Stride, it has Stomp Attacks D3, and it can fly 9 inches. Overall, Wyverns are fairly cheap in terms of flying monstrous mounts. They are extremely good at improving the durability of your characters, and they bring a lot of damage themselves. They are a smash, and it is not surprising in the least that you see many a competitive orc list running around with at least one of these things, and I have seen double Wyvern lists do well. After that, we have got the Aracnarok spiders. These are giant spiders. They are the first monster that you can take as a standalone creature, but they can also be mounts for a shaman, for a Goblin Shaman. They're quite impressive. They're movement 7, weapon skill 4, at strength 5, toughness 6 with 7 wounds. Of course, if you take it as a mount and then you have a character on there, it could have as many as 10 wounds. It gets 6 attacks, which are poisonous, and it does have the Venom Surge as well. In combat, this model may choose to make one of its attacks each turn with this weapon. Venom Surge is strength 5, AP -2, multiple wounds D6, poison attacks, and strikes first. You can also equip it with a Spider Silk Lobber, which is like a it's basically a crappy rock lobber, except for if it rolls a misfire, the mount just loses a wound. I probably wouldn't bother with that, to be honest. I like it, though. It does have immune psychology. It does have move through cover. It does have poison attacks. It does have stomp attacks D6. It is stubborn. It is swift stride. It is terror. The only downside is it is very expensive at 310 points. And it doesn't have an invulnerable save. But its armor value is 4+. Just like how it's got full plate. And it does come with 8 Goblin crew as well, which shouldn't be dismissed. That's an extra 8 attacks, which have poison. And the crew counts having cavalry spears and short bows. So they can either do some poison ranged attacks on the way in, and then when they charge, each one of those Goblin crew is going to be extra strength and extra AP. It's a big target. It's a lot of points if it goes down. And I have personally faced one of these things, and it was a tough bitch. I'm going to give it a smash because of Rule of Cool. It's definitely cannon fodder, but I'm going to give it a smash because it's a giant Makoff spider. That last one was a bit of a difficult choice. This next one is an easy choice. It is the Mangler squig. These are a smash. I mean, I shouldn't even have to tell you why 2 huge squigs chained together and then force-fed hallucinogenic mushrooms and then yeeted at the enemy is a smash. But if I have to explain it, I will do. Firstly, they're dirt cheap. 95 points. Great. Secondly, they're random movement, so good luck trying to stand and shoot these things. Thirdly, they've got random attacks D6, plus they've then got impact D6 attacks, plus they've also got stomp attacks D3. So it's a lot of random attacks, but eventually one of them's going to break and you are going to get a nice big spike of attacks. Also, it is strength 6, AP -2 with killing bloody blow, and when it does the impact hits, they are AP -3. I love them. Yeah, they're great. They have a lot going for them. They're tough. They're fast, they're unpredictable, they do a lot of damage, and they're cheap as hell. The last monster in the Orc and Goblin roster is the Giants. I want to like Giants. I really do. They have 2 pages of rules. They have some of the most flavorful attacks. You can shove enemy models down your trousers. They're awesome. And they're iconic. And they should be good. And at 200 points, they're not even too expensive. They're kind of expensive. But they're not prohibitively expensive. They're not the Aracnarok spider expensive. And they're unbreakable. And they're immune psychology. And they cause terror. And they've got stomp attacks. They should be good. But they're not. And it pains me to say it, but they're a pass. And the reason they're a pass is they are just absolute cannon fodder. Absolute cannon fodder. They have no armor worth speaking of. They have technically got light armor, but they've got no armor worth speaking of. And they rely far too much on that toughness 6 to keep them safe. But they're only 6 wounds. And they die far too easily on their way up the board. And even if they get into combat, there's a real chance that they get into combat with something, anything with great weapons, and then they just die. They just fall over and die. I have faced Giants, I think 3 times with either Empire or with Dwarves, and every single time the Giant either died before it got halfway across the board, or it got injured coming across the board from a Dwarf cannon, and then charged into a unit of long beards of great weapons, and it just got chopped to pieces. I'm sorry, Giant fans. They're very cool, but in my experience, they're just not worth it. After the monsters, we have got the war machines. In this selection, you will not find anything as technologically advanced as a cannon or any other kind of black powder weapon, but Orc war machines more than get the job done. You've got the cheap Goblin bolt throwers, which are just 45 points each, and they have your typical bolt thrower stat line. They still have to roll to hit, but if they do hit, they start skewering through all the ranks. You've got your Goblin Rock Lobbers, which are just quintessential stone throwers, also cheap at only 75 points. None of these have any special rules or anything crazy, but the big one, the one that is the most iconic, most famous of the Goblin War Machines, is the Doom Diver Catapult. Now, this is essentially a Rock Lobber that costs 20 points more. The reason it costs 20 points more is because of the Doom Diver special rule. When shooting a Doom Diver Catapult, you follow the bombardment special rule as usual. Once step 2 scatter is complete, you may roll a d3 and move the 3-inch blast template by that many inches in any direction, representing the Doom Diver wildly flapping its arms to guide its erratic flight. Should you choose to fire a Doom Diver Catapult indirectly, the skill of the crew has no bearing on the accuracy of the shot. If a hit is rolled on the scatter dice, use the small arrow above the hit symbol to determine the direction of the scatter as usual. Then move the template a number of inches equal to the roll of the artillery dice, minus d3 to a minimum of 0, representing the efforts of the Doom Diver to steer its flight. In summary, it's a Rock Lobber that is significantly more accurate, and that is worth its weight in gold, because Rock Lobbers are really good. Stone throwers are really good artillery pieces. I wish my Empire had them. Screw them all. Return to Rock Lobbers. That's what I say. In fact, all of these war machines are a smash. All Goblin war machines are in fact so good that one of the competitive ways of running your army is the Orc Artillery Corps, where you take double Rock Lobber, double Doom Diver, double Bolt Thrower, screen that out with some core Black Orcs and some core Squig herds, and then have a character or 2 on Wyvern, and essentially you just blast the enemy with your firepower, you blast them with magic, and then when they get close, you've got these very tasty, these very choppy bricks of units that can finish the job off. But wait, there's more! Because whilst that is all of the units from the Ravening Hordes book, of course the Orcs and Goblins do have their Arcane Journal, and there are a number of units in there which we'll take a cheeky gander at now. First, we have the Black Orc Boar Chariots. These are a new rare unit, but as far as I can see, they can only be taken in a nomadic war. So we obviously have to frame things in that context. Looking at them on their own merits, they are 130 points for essentially a Boar Boy Chariot, which has got a 3-up save, and also has Furious Charge. But that is like 40 points more for that extra save, which is good. I've faced Chaos Chariots, 3-up save is good. They still died to cannons though, that's the thing. And you do have to pay for the great weapons, whereas Orc Boar Chariots do come with cavalry spears as standard, so they get sort of the extra strength that they need. If I was to look at these on their own, I think that they're a little pricey. Because they don't quell impetuosity either. That's the weird thing about the Black Orc Boar Chariots. They don't quell impetuosity. So, on their own, I'm not convinced. But, inside the Nomadic War, take into account that the only other rare choice you have in that book is a goddamn giant. And we know that giants just aren't good. I think that they, by default, get a smash. Also, it is important to note that if your general is a Black Orc boss, then one Black Orc Boar Chariot may be taken as a core choice, which is obviously a very good thing because you want to be able to round your core out with decent units. And you don't have your big Black Orc mob or your Squigherds to be able to do those good core choices. So if this was just something in a normal Orc and Goblin army, a grand army, I wouldn't recommend it. But because of where it is found, because of the other things, the other factors that you must take into account, I am going to give it a smash. Speaking of the Nomadic War, we have a special character, a named character, Kiknik Toofsnatcha. Now, when this guy was first revealed, a lot of people kind of just dismissed it as a big gobbo on a big wolf. But after some time has passed and we've been able to sort of delve into this model and get an appreciation for what it can do, I actually think that Kiknik is really, really good. Firstly, he is dirt cheap for a named character, coming in at just 105 points. Kiknik himself has weapon skill 5 with strength 4, toughness 4 and 3 wounds at initiative 5 with 4 attacks and leadership 8. That's pretty good for a gobbo stat line. And then we've got Chomper, which is his big wolf, and Chomper has still got movement 9, so still fast as all hell. And we've got weapon skill 3. Native strength 4 on the wolf is a big deal. We've spoken earlier in this video about how strength 3 is not up to it. You need that strength 4. And then the wolf also has 2 attacks. So in total, this model is putting out 6 attacks for only 105 points. As for his equipment, Kiknik comes equipped with the boss's trophy rack, the skull smasher, a cavalry spear, shield, and light armor. Now, the trophy rack gives you fear and +1 combat res in a turn in which Kiknik and the unit that he has joined has charged. So if you have Kiknik plus a standard in that unit, you'll get +2 to the combat resolution because you have the trophy rack and you'll have the regular standard bearer. Kind of crazy, but if you were to have a BSB in there, you could have +3, and if you were to have a war banner in there or something, you could get up to +4. That's +4 static combat res from goddamn Goblin Wolf Riders. That's not to be overlooked. Also, it's important to note that by causing fear, it does also mitigate any units that cause terror that the Wolf Riders and Kiknik might be required to charge against. Sometimes what can really screw up your plans is just a failed terror test. The Skull Smasher is the special weapon that Kiknik comes with, and it has 2 different profiles, and you get to choose which one you want to use at the start of the combat. So you can use the hammer, which is strength +2, AP -1, armor bane 2, or you can use the pick. Now that is a strength user, so we'll reference that strength 4, but it is AP -2, so it's got a bit more AP right off the bat, and it's still armor bane 2, and it's still magical attacks, and it is multiple wounds 2. So if you are coming across something that just needs to be wounded, just something that's high toughness, then go for the hammer. That'll also help you against some medium toughness things like toughness 4 infantry, which potentially you'd be able to start wounding on 2s, which is nice. And then when you come across something that's maybe got a bit more armor to it, you could use the pick. Or if you've got something which has got multiple wounds but isn't particularly tough, like a lot of like elf characters and stuff, then you could use the pick for that as well, thanks to the multiple wounds too. I mean, hell, it sounds crazy, but even using the pick against something like trolls or troll equivalent, which are only toughness 4, yeah, you'd be wounding on 4s, that thing, but the multiple wounds 2 could make a big difference. Kiknik has also got a whole bunch of special rules. So we've got all sneaky like and hit and run, which we'll come back to in a moment because they're his unique ones. We have got ambushers and armor bane 1 for Chomper. So those 2 attacks that Chomper's putting out do have a potential bit of AP, which is nice. And also we've got armored hide, which combines well with the light armor and shield to give this guy a 4-up save. Chariot runners and fast cavalry. He's still got fear of elves. He is impetuous, but he does have rallying cry. He does have swift stride, and he does have warband. So not too many debuffs, and kind of what you would expect to see in terms of special rules for a goblin, both positive and negative. But it's those truly unique rules that I think make Kiknik tasty, real tasty. So first off, you've got all sneaky like. 0 to 1 Goblin Wolf Rider mobs in the same muster as Kiknik may have the ambusher special rule for free, just full blown for free. In addition, you may apply a +1 or a -1 modifier to the result when rolling to determine if a Goblin Wolf Rider mob with the ambusher special rule that is currently held in reserves arrives to turn as reinforcements or is delayed. Now, I'm not clever enough to understand why you might want to delay your ambushers turning up, but it's nice to have the choice of being able to apply that +1 or apply that -1. And having the +1 is just, for me, seems obviously like a great thing. There's nothing worse than having a good ambush, a good potential flanking maneuver set up, and then you just don't get the roll off and you just doesn't turn up, and suddenly your opponent is able to deal with your forces in detail. Hit and run kind of does what it says on the tin. Should they win a round of combat, Kiknik and any Goblin Wolf Rider mob he has joined may choose to fall back in good order rather than making a follow-up or pursuit move. Now, often, if you win a round of combat, you might want to just follow up, keep driving that enemy unit backwards, but not always. Sometimes you might win a round of combat because you were lucky, but you know if you follow up or if you're about to get countercharged that you're not going to be so lucky again. Also, you might find that by winning a combat, forcing an enemy unit to fall back in good order or to give ground, that it comes over to your turn and there could be an opportunity for you to slip through a gap that has been created. Either way, it's a good tool to have in the toolbox. And taking all of this together, the fact that overall Kiknik has got a lot of good special rules, the fact that he has got good damage output, and combined with that frankly incredible points cost of only 105 points, I think he is an easy smash. Now that covers all of the nomadic war units, although it should be mentioned that Kiknik can be taken in other grand armies as well. But let's go over to the other army of infamy, the Troll Horde, and take a look at their units. And here we find one of the most infamous Orc and Goblin models. It is the Troll Hag, aka the Troll Princess, aka that model with the big swinging saggy titties. Now, I'm not just saying this because of the boobs, but the Troll Hag is definitely a smash unit, especially when you take into account that you can only get these in the Troll Horde. As a result, they are almost indispensable because they are one of the few units that gets access to troll magic. And troll magic has some really good spells in there, such as Ravenous Recourse, which can give your trolls a +2 movement modifier. Bearing in mind that trolls are already weirdly, like, I think it's like movement 5 or movement 6, they're already weirdly fast. And so being able to get them even faster means that you can get your big lads up the table damn quickly. On top of this, the Troll Hag is a monster in its own right and therefore has a pretty good durable stat line. You've got strength 6, you've got toughness 5, you've got 6 wounds. All of this for only 235 points, and you get heavy armor, you get the 5 up regen, and you also get special rules like indiscriminate hunger. You've got the fact that the Troll Hag attacks in a unique way similar to a giant. There's just a lot of things that are good about this model, and I'm not saying I'd ever let a Troll Hag sit on my face, but I would put one in my army list. In addition to the Troll Hag, one of the unique characters that comes along with the Troll Horde is Olgruz Swampdigga. Olgruz comes in at 195 points, and he is a level 3 wizard. He has a stat line of essentially an Orc Weird Knob, and he does have access to Elementalism, and he is one of the other few characters that can get access to the troll magic. I have to say, I do have mixed feelings about Olgruz. On the one hand, he has some very important special rules, like Da Troll Caller, which means that troll mobs that are within Olgruz's command range may use his leadership characteristic instead of their own. He is leadership 8, so this makes him very, very important when trying to pass those stupidity tests. He also can have Siphon Strength. Whilst Olgruz is in 3 inches of a friendly troll mob unit with a unit strength of 6 or more, and is not fleeing, he may apply a +1 modifier to any casting rolls he makes. That means that even though he's a level 3, he can cast on a +1, making him a pseudo level 4. He's also somewhat durable for a wizard because not only is he toughness 5 with 3 wounds, like a good orc, but he also does have the Trollhide Shawl, which gives him a little bit of armor and gives him 5+ regen. The problem I have with Olgruz is that he is far more expensive than a normal level 4, a proper level 4 Orc Shaman or Goblin Shaman. Those guys are going to come in at like 160, 165 points. He's 195 points. And he is a level 4 if he's got trolls near him, essentially. But that siphon strength applies to casting rolls he makes. It does not apply to dispel rolls he tries to make. And so he's only a level 3. And so if you're relying on him for being your big wizard, he's got a really big gap in his abilities. He's not very good at magic defense, which can be vitally important. Because of this, even though you may take Olgruz Swampdigga in any Orc and Goblin tribe army, I would probably not take him outside of Troll Horde. And even in Troll Horde, I think he's good, but he's not an auto-include. Now, technically, that covers all of the Orc and Goblin specific units. But as part of the Arcane Journal, there were a couple of mercenary options that were made available. And the first one of these is the Badlands Ogre Bulls. These lads come in at 31 points a pop, and you can take them in squads of 3+, and you can upgrade them to have things like champions and all the other usual things. They start off with hand weapons and light armor, and they can be given additional hand weapons, great weapons, an iron fist, which is strength, user AP nothing, extra attacks 1 but requires 2 hands. A model equipped with an iron fist improves its armor value by 1, so it's kind of like a shield you can twat people with. And you could also upgrade the light armor to heavy armor. Special rules they have is armor bane 1, close order, fear, impact hits 1, which I guess is quite kind of nice. And they have got motley crew, so you can mix and match, and they've got ogre charge. Ogre charge, the armor piercing characteristic of any impact hits caused by a model with this special rule is improved by the current rank bonus of the unit. Overall, I do think that ogre balls are a pretty good unit. Some people are going to stay away from them because of the mercenaries thing, and if you roll on that table, you may roll a 1 and then they're kind of bad. But I think that ogre balls are actually quite a useful unit for a lot of armies because they can be taken by any army using the grand army composition. Literally Empire can have them, so literally anyone can use them. So on their own, I think they're actually quite good. I think with the Orcs and Goblins, you probably won't bother with them just because you've got plenty of your own options like trolls and all that kind of stuff. So you don't really need these guys, but for a lot of factions, they're going to be able to plug a gap. They're going to plug a hole, plug a capability. The problem is that a lot of tournaments don't allow allies or mercenaries, which I think is a shame. So as much as I want to give these guys a smash, it's a very situational thing, whether you can use them or not. And the last unit is the Bone Grinder Giants. These are really big giants. So these make regular giants look tiny. In fact, I think the point behind this particular sort of data sheet or unit entry, whatever you want to call it, is to allow you to use the new giant models which are on those big, like 150 by 100 or 100 by 150 mil size base. So you can use the Resi one, or you can use one of the sort of Age of Sigmar Mega Gargants. Now, these giants are very similar to your regular giants, but they do have a few distinguishing things which I think make them viable. I'm not saying they're good, I'm saying they're viable. Firstly, they've got a whopping 8 wounds. Now this is very important because 8 wounds means that unless someone gets very, very lucky with their double great cannon, or well, makes you completely immune to being one shot by regular dwarf cannons. Even if they roll max with double regular dwarf cannon, they can't kill you. And unless someone gets very lucky with double great cannon, you can't really be one shot. Those 8 wounds are actually quite good. You are still going to die in 2 turns of shooting, though. That firepower on average. But sometimes 2 turns is all you need. If you get that first turn, you yeet that Bone Grinder Giant forward, it takes 2 cannonballs to the gut, and then it's in amongst them, then that might be worth it. The 8 wounds are a big deal. The other thing is it does have random attacks like a regular giant, but unlike the regular giant and the troll princess, which sometimes you just roll something rubbish and you just basically waste your unit, the Bone Grinder Giant gets specific attacks against specific types of unit. So against little things like troops, and big things like monster infantry and cavalry, and even bigger things like heavy chariots and monster creatures and behemoths, you get a different sort of, you get a different result. And so that's actually quite good, because it means you're less likely to just go into combat with something and then just roll a crappy result and you don't get anything out of it. The problem with the Bone Grinder Giant is he's 300 points. So yes, he's much better than a regular giant, but he is also 50% more than a regular giant, and he still only has light armor. So he's still probably going to die. I'm going to give it a pass because of that. But if someone turned up with the Bone Grinder Giant, it would definitely do something on the field before it died. But I just don't think it would do enough. At least that's what I think. But of course, this and everything in this video is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you agree with my assessment of these units? Is this smash or pass accurate, or have I got it completely wrong? Are there certain units that you think I completely missed the mark on? Let me know. I'm open to all feedback and I'd love to get your thoughts. If you enjoyed today's video, then don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.